Hello, everyone. Welcome to the July 2013 Professor Messer A+ study group. This is our monthly study group that I like to do where you send me your questions and I make every attempt possible to answer them. It's almost getting difficult to get the study group put together these days. The study group is one where I send out a question to everybody. I put it on Facebook. I throw it out to Twitter. There's messages on my website. I inundate you with a request to send me questions, and you absolutely respond every time. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger every month. I'm going through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions every month. I feel bad sometimes because I know there's certain questions that would be really good. There's no way I'm going to be able to get that done in an hour. That's one of the challenges with putting together something like this is you almost would like to be able to have as much time as possible to go through every single question. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. We just don't have that kind of time. So we're going to jump right into this, and we'll talk about what we're doing on the study group. For those of you that are joining us live, I do have this streaming over YouTube Live. Now, if you're on the YouTube website, there's a chat there, but I don't see that chat. I see the chat that is on ProfessorMesser.com. And there is a chat at the bottom of the screen specifically for the A+ study group. Now, also this month, I'm going to try something new, something different. It may not even work, but who knows? You'll notice at the bottom of every page, there is a phone number. That phone number goes right to a studio line that I have on my screen, so I can see you calling in. So if you have a question, you can put it in the chat room. You can now, perhaps, we'll find out, you can call and we can see if that's going to work. I don't know if I have the bandwidth to handle all of that, but we're going to try it. We're going to see what happens. Worst case, it doesn't work very well. Best case, we might actually hear from you this month. Now, we do this monthly study group as something to make sure everybody's up to date with the latest things on the A+ exam. It really is made something that we're able to do, we're able to make because of your support. Now, as you probably know, I have A+ videos on my website. You can watch my entire A+ video course. There are over 100 videos there. The entire course is there. Every minute of every video is available for you to watch. I know some of you like to take these offline, though. You like to be on a plane. You like to listen to MP3 files. I have a version just for you that you could purchase if you wanted to take them offline. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/download-A+. But even if you don't get the offline, the downloadable versions, and I send you DVD-ROMs of all of this material as well. It's not just a downloadable version, but even if you're watching just for free on the internet, how great is that? It would be great if you were also able to follow me throughout the week, throughout the month on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter and on YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. So we have a lot of things that we're going to talk about. I mentioned I get hundreds of questions, and for those of you in the chat room already talking, there are duplicates in there. I move some things out of the way. I don't make it very structured. I just leave you open-ended. Send me your questions. I like to really go through details, but a number of the questions I get are things that we talked about earlier in other study groups previously. I take the study groups, I put them all online so you can watch a replay of all of them. But if you were wanting some very specific questions, I'm not going to repeat what I did last month. So I'd like to tell you what I did last month. What are the advantages of SSD over HDD? What are the types of RAIDs and the differences? Are IRQ problems a big deal? Is that something I should worry about? How long does it take to normally complete an A+ certification? Do I need to take my exams? There's 2 exams, of course. Do I need to take them within a certain amount of time? Should I book my test date before I start preparing for the exam? And has Windows 8 been added to the exam yet? Now, if you're interested in getting the answer to any of those, you can go out to the Professor Messer website. In the A+ index, I put a replay at the bottom, and hopefully it's going to be in there that you can find very easily right at the bottom. And I try to get as many of the study groups that at least pertain to this information as I can. For the last few study groups that we've been doing, I've been really emphasizing the 800 series material. And that's a real question that comes up every month about the 700 series and the 800 series. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. I did get a few questions this month of folks that wanted to be able to use this study group towards their continuing education units. That's one way that you can keep your certification renewed. I think most people will probably be taking a higher level certification within 3 years, which of course will automatically renew your A+. You don't have to do continuing education units, but this does count for continuing education units. And if you go out to the CompTIA website, if you search for CompTIA CEU FAQ, you will find this page, and it tells you what you need to put together. You don't need anything from me. You just write information down in a format that CompTIA wants, and you send it to them. You say, I watched the Professor Messer study group. I was there live. We did it on this day and this time, and they will add those credits to your CEU count. So what's new? What's going on? Is there what's happening out there? I have been working on the A+ certification. For those of you that were here last month, the 800 series videos on my website are now complete. You can watch the entire series of 801 and 802 videos from beginning to end. You can not only see them online, but as I mentioned, you can download them. One thing that is different with this version of videos over really any other version that I've ever done is I have everything transcribed. If you go out to YouTube and you watch the videos, you know, there's that closed captioning option at the bottom. And if you've ever done this, YouTube has an automated way of going through the video, and it tries to figure out what someone's saying. And it's okay, but it really gets things wrong, especially with technology type videos. Well, I have sent all of these videos off to a third party who has transcribed every single one of them. That transcription is on YouTube. So you can watch a very detailed, I won't say it's 100%, but it's close to 100% accuracy. And I've gone through and I've made sure, I've done some spot checks to make sure that's pretty good. You can also, if you get, go to the website and look at a video, and I don't know why I'm saying it, why I'm not just showing it to you. Since, you know, we've got this computer and things, and we can show those things. Let me take this. So here's the Professor Messer website. And if you go and look at my training materials, if you go to the free A+, 801, 802, and it's just the 800 series videos that have this, and you were to watch a video that's in here, let's just choose one, Understanding PC Memory. So here's the video. Now, right at the bottom of the video, when you start playing it, will be a little CC here. I'm going to turn on captions. In our computers, the memory architecture and let me get rid of the captions. There you go. So you can see so much communication that takes place between the CPU and the memory sticks themselves. Our memory is there, and it just has it right there on the screen. The North Bridge. You might also hear this referred to as the memory that for me, I have family members that have hearing problems. So for me, that was a pretty big deal to have something like that available. It's not at all inexpensive, but I like to have it there. The entire transcript also is on the page now, so you could just read everything I say in the video. And the transcripts are kind of funny. If you start reading them, they don't really read like a book. I didn't really design them that way. And I did not change any of the text that's in there. I just copied out the closed caption. I stuck it on the page. So you can even read along. If you can't watch the video, at least the text will be there for you. One other thing that I've added recently, I really like this, is there is this review quiz at the bottom of all the 801 series. I'm working on the 802 right now, so I hope to have those done very soon. But you can take a quiz right at the bottom that talks about the things that were in that video. So 3 questions, 4 questions. There's at least 3 questions. Sometimes there's 5 and 6. So which of these would you most likely use? ECC memory. Let's choose. I'm going to choose the wrong one so you see what happens. I say it's a print server. Oh, wrong. Let's try again. So this isn't something that I'm restricting you. You can't answer the right one again. We can choose the right one, gives an explanation of what that right one is, and then we can go to the next question. What does this represent? What does you have here? What is this? And at the end of it, you can even list out all 3 and see which ones you want to answer with those pieces. And then unique characteristics, we will do this. Nope, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Oh, I got it right, finally. And there's the answer. And now you've got, a final score of how you did. So it's really just to give you some immediate feedback of how that is working for you. And I think that's when we start working with these videos. There's so much content. It's being inundated on our noggins to be able to do that. So I wanted to give you more things to grab and soak in with those pieces. I also want to be able to add more notes for the video, summarize all of the text into some bulleted notes for you. So those are things, if you wanted to help with that on the Professor Messer website, there's a wiki. let's go back to the website, show you that piece. Out on the Professor Messer website is a wiki, and the wiki is something that you can edit. You can go into the Professor Messer wiki. You can go to the 801A Plus training notes. I've already added a few of them. So let's go how to install BIOS upgrades, the video notes. Here are the notes from the video. There's a link to the video if you want to go back to the video from that. And I've also got all the notes in here, just a summary. I've really taken the transcript and I've cut it down into bullet. So that's everything that's from that video. You can now go to the next one. And then we can go back to the full training course notes to see all of them. So every time you see one of these video notes, that's where those are. And you can edit those yourself. I can certainly do them, and I'm planning on going through and doing some of them, but you don't have to wait for me. If you have notes you would like to add, I can help you. You can contact me. I'll show you how to edit this. Maybe I'll do, I don't know, here's a crazy idea. I'll do a video that describes how to edit the wiki. I'm not sure why I haven't done that before. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? So those types of things would be really useful, I think, to have everybody have access to and be able to work on those pieces. So there's only a few notes in here for a few of the videos. I've really been working on the quizzes. The 802 quizzes will be coming soon. I want to fill in the notes to these things, and we're just going to keep doing this. I really appreciate the feedback I've gotten already about the transcripts, about those things. It's not an insignificant investment. It costs real money to have people sit there and type out these transcripts. So it's great that people are able to use that from other places. Now, I do have, in this study group that we are doing, I have this call-in line that we have. You can see at the bottom of your screen. But I've also got ways that you don't have to call in to participate. I have questions that I ask of you. So you can pop open a new browser screen, or perhaps even easier, grab your mobile device, grab your phone, and type in there vot.rs. You go to that website, vot.rs, and use the number 975187. And if you do that, it takes you to a page where you can vote on a particular question that I have. Now, I have other quiz questions we're going to do during the study group, but this first one is, how long have you been studying for your A+ certification? I'd like to get feedback from you. I think that's one of the things that helps me understand how I need to build these study groups. And this is also a nice way to get a type of feedback from you on what types of things can I ask of you. We can do some fun quizzes. We can test your knowledge of certain topics. And all you have to do is go to vot.rs and go to 975187. Now, when you go there, it will ask you, are you studying less than a month, 1 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 to 12 months, or more than a year? I think I'm one of those people that can even go more than a year with some of these certifications I'm working on. There's some things that I've been working on. This is what I call my guitar playing. I am not a guitar player. Now, I have played musical instruments in the past, not so much anymore. I need to get back into that. But I'd love to play the guitar. I've always loved to play the guitar. And I sit down and I work with it for a week, and then it sits in the corner. And then I go back to it. So I'm that more than a year kind of person. Sometimes it takes me a long time to get through and understand the things that I need to study and work on. And real life gets in the way. You're studying for a certification, there's real life, and then you come back to it for more than a year. I'm going to show the results so far. We've got 26 respondents. A nice mix there at the beginning. That's really what I usually will see, is less than a month, for all the way up to about 6 months is the people that we have here. But my people back here, more than a year. Some of you have been studying this for a while. You're my folks. So that's what we have there. We get in there and try to get into it and then come back again on the other side. So that's a pretty good mix. I think a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in this version of the study group will address not only things that we need if you're just starting out, but also things on the other side. So don't close that window you voted, or make sure you have something up, because I've got other questions for you as we go through the live study group. Well, there is already talk of this in the chat room about what is the deal with the exam. I've already talked about a 700 series, an 800 series. What in the world is going on? And there is a change underway. There's really been a change underway for quite some time. for about 9 months, you've been able to take the newest version of the A+ exam, the 800 series. This is the 801 exam and the 802 exam. For those of you that are just getting into A+, to get your A+ certification, you have to pass 2 exams, the 801 and the 802. Once you pass both of those, you're A+ certified. Well, prior to this, there was what we call the 700 series exam. For the past 3 years before that, we have had the 700 series. The exams are updated periodically, about every 3 years, so that the content within the exam is at least up to date with the latest technologies. So this 700 series exam, the 701 and the 702, are still available, but, and this is the important part, we're finally at the point that about a month from now, at the end of August, the 700 series exam disappears forever. It is retired. Now, you could take the 700 series A+ exam and pass both of the 701 and 702 on the final day if you wanted to. If you wanted to wait until August 31st and take both of them, you would be A+ certified for 3 years. So it doesn't matter that the exam is being retired. Whether you get a A+ certification with the 800 series or 700 series doesn't matter. It's the same A+ cert. It's the same certification. It's the same 3 years. The clock starts ticking. So you can make a decision. Now, if you're just starting your studies, I would not recommend studying the 700 series material because you only have a month and you have to pass both exams within the same series. So if you take the 701, you've got to pass the 702, and you can do them in a different order. If you take the 702, you've got to pass the 701, but the point is they have to be of the same series. So if you've already taken the 701 and you just need to take the 702, you better do it before August 31st because once it's retired, you have to restart. You have to take now the 801 and the 802 because the exams are laid out completely different. There's different material. There's a lot that's overlap, but it's a different exam. So you can't use a 701 and exchange it for an 801. Doesn't work that way. They will not let you do that. So that's pretty important. The 800 series exam is good. The 700 series has a little bit older technology on it. Okay, a lot older technology. Windows 2000. It's very, very hard now to find anybody still running Windows 2000. 3 years ago, plus when the 700 series came out, there were still people still running it on their machines. I'd see it on people's laptops on airplanes. It was remarkable, but I did see it out there. Now, it's not in the wild at all. I don't really see it wandering around the airports. I don't see it in coffee shops. You just don't run into it. I imagine there are still legacy servers somewhere running Windows 2000. There's probably some running OS 2 somewhere. But the key for me is that this is something that is now outdated. The material that's in it is not the most recent material. So one of the advantages of the 700 series is that it was all multiple choice. Every single question you got was a multiple choice question. On the 800 series exam, you have these things called performance-based questions where you have to perform a task. You're given a picture, you have to perform a task on that picture. You are given a list of things and you have to put them in order from lowest bandwidth to highest bandwidth. I'm guessing that's an example of one might be. They have a lot of sample performance-based questions that you can look at on the CompTIA website. If you go to YouTube and you search for CompTIA exam, CompTIA candidate experience, I think that's what it is. There is a video there, and I've got a link to that later on in the study group, so you'll be able to pull that up. The 800 series doesn't have Windows 2000. They both have Windows 7, effectively almost exactly the same on the Windows 7 side. The 800 series has mobile devices, so there's some other things there on those pieces as well. Now, the exams themselves are laid out a little bit differently. So the 801 has PC hardware, networking, laptops, printers, and operational procedures. We used to call the 700 series the essentials and the practical application. Those terms are gone now. We have really separated them out. The 801 and 802 cover completely different topics. So if you study for the 801, it really isn't one that's gonna give you a lot of information that will be duplicated on the 802. They really are very unique in what they are asking of you. Now, the more you know about these things, the more it will help you on either exam, certainly. But the older 700 series had, you learn the hardware in 701, you troubleshoot it in 702. Doesn't work that way anymore. You learn the hardware and troubleshoot it in 801. In 802, you're off to operating systems. There's practically no hardware in 802 other than the troubleshooting piece that might be at the bottom. And the troubleshooting goes into some very specific things. So knowing the hardware is important in 801. There's a lot of troubleshooting, operating system security, and mobile devices in 802. Now, you notice the passing scores at the bottom. I get a lot of questions on the study groups, questions that are sent to me about these questions, about the number of questions and how they are graded. And CompTIA doesn't share exactly how things are graded, but you'll notice that it is a passing score of 675 on a scale of 900. The passing score for the 802 is 700 on a scale of 900. And people say, well, okay, let me do a calculation of what the percentage complete would be. But we can't do that because we believe that the numbers for each, or the questions that you get, have different values, different numbers associated with them. They're worth a different number of points. So if you get a question right, you get a certain number of points. The next question may be a different number of points. And that's why you have this 675 out of 900. And there's a reason they do this. And we're going to talk more about that in the study group coming up. All right, let's go to some questions that you have. Let's talk about things that you are doing with your A+ exam. And I mentioned I have these quiz questions that I have for you today, and I have another quiz question for you. What type of memory is commonly found on laptops? And I'm mentioning this. Okay, I found my view of this online. If you go to vot.rs, you can use the number 349587, 349587. Go to vot.rs. If you have a QR code reader on your mobile device, just point it at the screen, click, takes you right there. It's another nice thing about this testing service that I'm using for this. Now, this is a way that you're able to really get into and answer these questions. And the options that I have for you on these questions are a SODIMM, a DIMM, a SIM, and a RIM. All of these are memory types. I didn't make any of those up, but only one of them is commonly found in laptop devices. And that's when you start to really get into working with laptops and mobile devices and having these platforms. You don't have a lot of real estate. So one of these memory types, I'm going to give you a hint here. One of these memory types is a lot smaller than the others so that they will fit into these mobile devices and be able to get in there. I'm going to let everyone vote on that. Take a sip of coffee. Look at 27 respondents. Don't answer in the chat room. Do not answer in the chat room. Don't do that. Don't spoil it. We got 32 people, 34 respondents. Let's have a couple more. 37. And I'm going to now show it to you since it comes out a little bit of a delay for you. I fooled very few people with this one. 39 of you answered SODIMM. And a few of you answered DIMM and SIM and RIM, but the vast majority of you got this absolutely right. The SODIMM is a type of memory that is relatively small. Normally I have one sitting up here somewhere. It's unusual that I don't have one on my desk right now. The SODIMM is perfect for mobile devices because of its form factor. So it's one of the nice things that are very useful to have. Now, the reason I bring up laptops is one of the questions that I got this week was, what are the ways that laptop performance can deteriorate? SH asked me. So this is a challenge. This is things that have happened to me, especially with laptops. There's so many different things where laptops can cause a problem. And from a performance perspective, we have a lot of things to consider. This is a picture of my laptop, or was a picture of my laptop. This is probably the thing that I think a lot of people don't even realize, is that laptops get really dusty. And if you have a laptop and you're using it a lot, you'll notice there's a fan in most laptops. I think every laptop these days has a fan in it. That fan is pulling cool air into your computer, and it is cooling the video, the CPU. It's cooling everything inside that laptop. When that airflow, especially on a laptop, which is this very narrow strip, it might be on the bottom like this one was. It might be a really narrow strip on the back of your laptop. Sometimes it's hard to see the fins that are used to get that. When they start getting into this situation where there's no air coming in, makes an incredible difference with the heat inside of your laptop. That heat starts rising very quickly. And when the heat rises in a laptop CPUs are designed to throttle down, they change their clock rates to be slower so that they will not produce as much heat. So they're constantly checking the heat, go, wow, it's hot in here. I'm going to start working so hard. And maybe we can keep things cooler with that piece. Interestingly enough, on this screen, because some of you say this is a mess. What happened? What is your office like if that's your laptop? That's just sitting on a desk. That is the bottom of the laptop just sitting on a desk in a very clean room. I don't have cats, so I don't have, feathers floating through the air all the time. So that in itself is remarkable that can be done just in what's happening around us all the time. So if you are able to clean the dust out, sometimes it involves taking the laptop apart. Sometimes you can get in there really closely and get as much dust out. It's amazing the difference that can make with performance. Your fan doesn't turn on as much. The CPU stays fast, so instantly you're getting a nice response. Also, laptops are designed to slow down when they're on battery power. And that makes sense. If you're mobile, then you only have so much juice available. There's only so much time that you're going to have available to work with that laptop. And if the CPU is always churning away at the highest possible rate, then it's going to use much more battery. It uses a lot more battery. If we were able to throttle down, well, then I don't use as much battery. So one of the things that can really help with performance on a laptop is to always give it power. And then it knows, we can go as fast as we want and churn away. There's many things that adjust the CPU in laptops, but that's one of the more significant ones. Laptop performance for the operating system can be a problem, especially with Windows, because Windows over time, as we add more applications and the registry gets larger, and I found one of the problems I have is that occasionally an operating system or the installation of a program under the operating system could change registry settings and permissions. And so I had a laptop that when you turned it on took forever to boot. I mean, minutes and minutes and minutes, and it would just stop at a screen. It would just sit there because I had a permission problem in my registry where it was trying to read it, couldn't read it, tried to read it, couldn't read it, and just did it over and over and over again until it finally gave up after minutes went by, and then the laptop was normal. So these odd little operating system problems, sometimes I don't recommend registry cleaners. They really aren't very good. They really break more things than they actually fix. The registries, when they are done properly, are really not a big problem. It's these applications that create one problem and that affects everybody. That's really the problem. And some of the biggest problems you'll see, not just with registry, but laptops in general, huge malware problem these days. You always have to make sure that you have a good backup. Make sure that you have very good antivirus and anti-malware software. Make sure it's updated to the latest signatures. It's a pretty big deal. That's something that can help you. So whenever you're working on a laptop or a desktop, these are things to always think about to make sure those devices are going to be running at their full capacity. Well, let's shift our gears a little bit. There were a lot of networking questions this month, so I wanted to be sure that we had some network questions that I could cover on this. And one was kind of a repeat from the Network Plus study group that I did last week. So it's a little bit of a repeat, but it bears repeating because I got 3 or 4 more questions of exactly the same thing. But first, I have a question for you. So get your mobile devices ready and you can answer this question. What IP class would have been associated with 220.10.192.172? What class is that? Now, with IP networking, the classes are Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D, and Class E. But if you go to vot.rs, do not answer in the chat room. Do not answer in the chat room. There is number 275006, 275006. Also, I will remind you that we have our studio line available for you to call in at 347-989-8745. Go back to it's at the bottom of the screen there, 347-989-8745. If you have a question you just want to ask directly, we can go off script. I don't mind doing that. So your options here, Class A, Class B, Class C, and Class D. And I'm going to really quickly hide this so nobody sees these results till they get through. It's vot.rs 275006. Now, I mentioned this, the name of this is interesting, or the question of this is interesting, isn't it? What IP class would have been associated. And this speaks to the question that I got this month, a number of questions that I got this month about those pieces. Now, I mentioned this in the past tense because we don't use classes anymore. And yet we talk about them all the time. You have to learn them. And there's reasons that you do have to learn them. Very useful. So this is one of those things that when you run into it, it's useful to know this information. I know a lot of the things in the A+, it seems like you have to memorize this, and it seems like you're memorizing it for the sake of memorizing it. I have to memorize classes of IP addresses. This doesn't make sense at all. When will I ever use this? I don't know, every day. If you do networking, you use it all the time. If you don't do networking, you use it a lot. We've got a lot of results. Let's see, from the 46 respondents, 2 people said Class A, 10 said Class B, 10 said Class D. We have a perfect curve there, a bell curve that we've created on the screen. The answer is Class C. So the vast majority, or at least the majority, not the vast, but the majority of you did answer Class C. Now, why isn't that Class B or Class D? Class E, what are those classes? What is that about? What are those things? That is a good question. So let's talk a little bit about that. The reason that came in as a question, or I wanted to talk about classes, was I got a question. Don't be thrown too much by this. The question is, when I run ipconfig on any PC on a home network, then you're looking at the IP address of your configuration. That's the command at the command line that shows you what your IP configuration is. He says his IP without any type of CIDR notation. We'll talk a bit about what CIDR notation is. The subnet is listed in what we call dotted decimal form, which is 255.255.255.0. Now, does this mean that internally the router is running a classful subnet? Very, very well stated. Or does this just mean that it's defaulting to /24 and it's not even putting that on the screen? What is that? And so the real question becomes is, what am I looking at here? There's classes and there's dotted decimal and there's CIDR block notation. How do these things interrelate? We use these in terms, especially in technology sometimes, and we forget all about the pieces that are surrounding this. Let's talk about classful subnetting. These classes of IP addresses, whenever you hear somebody say it's a Class A address, it's a Class B address, it's a Class C address, they have time warped themselves to sometime before 1993. If you've ever configured a workstation or you've looked at the configuration of your IP addresses, you'll notice that you have an IP address and you have a subnet mask. You might have a default gateway and a DNS setting and those things, but let's just talk about IP address and subnet mask. So when we start looking at IP addresses and subnet masks, we really get into a situation where we're wanting to be able to see what's gone. What is the IP addresses and subnet masks associated with this? And I think whenever we start looking at it, we do have problems sometimes with people trying to interpret this. Before 1993, and really well before 1993, the idea was that I could give you an IP address and I wouldn't give you a subnet mask. Your IP address would determine what the subnet mask was. We call that classful subnetting. And whenever you start dealing with things like that, that becomes a little bit easier. You don't even have to tell people what the subnet mask is. It figures it out automatically. How great is that? Well, the problem with that is that I'd give you an IP address of 192.168.1.2. Your computer would automatically figure that out was Class B. It would automatically assign a subnet mask to that of 255.255.0.0. So automatic is great, but it creates a lot of waste. And here's what I mean by that. If you were to get that Class B address, 192, or I gave you 165.245.0.1. Hopefully that's the one I gave you earlier. That's the one I meant to give you, 165.245.0.1. That's a network I used to manage, so it's stuck in my head. It was a Class B type of address, which meant I could create 16,384 networks, and there would be 65,534 possible hosts per network. Now, nobody who builds networks is going to put 65,000 devices on the same subnet. That's crazy. You'd never be able to manage that. You'd have problems with broadcasts. You'd have problems with just traffic in general. And although switches would help, there's no way you would ever build a network that large. So you've been given this IP address. You got a default subnet mask that you can't change because it's classful. And now you got a lot of waste. Man, I could break that up. I could break that up into a bunch of smaller networks, and I'd be in great shape because I got plenty of networks to pull from. If I made the host smaller, in fact, my number of networks would be larger. That's what I really want to be able to do. That would make a lot more sense. So we realized we needed to do something about that. If you are trying to determine if a class is class A, B, or C automatically, you simply look at the first octet, the first number of the IP address. And if the first number is between 1 and 126, it's a class A. If it's between 128 and 191, it's class B. And if it's between 192 and 223, it is a class C. So this is one of the challenges you have with that automatic old school class-based. So we said, okay, forget automatic. Let's give you the opportunity to put whatever subnet mask you want. Let's have you subnet that even deeper that doesn't follow these very strict rules about subnetting. And we call that a classless-based subnetting, classless inter-domain routing. We abbreviate this to call it CIDR, CIDR. And what that really means is that you can create whatever subnet mask you would like based on that. The idea being you start with the base subnet mask, like class B, like 165.245.0.0. I start with what the default would have been, 255.255.0.0. And then I work my way back. And I am able to borrow more of those bits inside of it. So even though it's class B, I can now use my own subnet mask that goes beyond that. Maybe I'd like it to be 255.255.255.0. Now, in common parlance, whenever we are communicating with a network person, we will sometimes say, oh, that uses a class C subnet, because that's just much easier to say. We aren't saying that we're automatically determining the IP address and using these old school ways of looking at a subnet mask. We're just saying, hey, the subnet mask you should put in there should duplicate or look exactly like what you would have normally seen in a class C subnet mask a long time ago. So we're confusing ourselves really by still using those old terms. What we're really saying is that network has a class C subnet. What we're really saying is that network has a network subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. Now, I mentioned earlier in the question that somebody said, what about this /24 thing? Because there was this, what we call a CIDR block notation of these different /24s. You can abbreviate, instead of saying 255.255.255.0, you could say, I want to use 24 bits of this subnet, so I'm going to call it /24. Or instead of saying 255.0.0.0, I'm only going to use 8 bits of the subnet and put a /8 at the bottom. And we just don't have time in the study group to go through binary calculation, but I've got a whole video on how to calculate binary and where we got that from. But that is why you will sometimes see /24. You will sometimes see 255.255.255.0. Means exactly the same thing. It just depends on how you show it on the screen. When you configure some firewalls, they want you to put dotted decimal notation. 255.255.255.0. Some of them want you to put a /24, a CIDR block notation. Some will take either. So you have to look at what you're configuring and what's there. Pretty useful to have that there. So the question on originally was, I see 255.255.255.0. We don't use classless-based networking. Why does it say that? That's just how we put it in there. As humans are able to read that easier. And the /24 means exactly the same thing. Sometimes your device shows that, sometimes it doesn't. But a /24 and a 255.255.255.0 mean exactly the same thing. That's your subnet mask. So again, with networking, we're just complicating it. We're just we're trying to make it easier, because sometimes the number of bits that you're using in subnet mask might be /26. Okay, that's 255.255.255.192. So sometimes you really have to put the / in there to save room, but in your head, you have to calculate out what that's going to be because now you're typing that into another device that doesn't take the slash, it takes the dotted decimal. Sometimes it's hard to the network side because you have to do math. And don't be concerned as you're studying for these exams that it's hard for you to figure that piece out. It's hard for network professionals sometimes. We get flummoxed with the subnet masking and converting from a dotted decimal to a CIDR block. That's just normal humans. So don't get too worried about that piece. That sometimes can be a bit of a challenge, can it not? For those of you that have looked at these private addresses, there's a certain set of addresses that have been set aside that you could only use inside of a network. They're not routed on the internet. You'll sometimes see those have CIDR block notation. So a set of private addresses would be 10.0.0.0/8, which is the same thing as 255.2.0.0.0. It could be 172.16.0.0/12. Again, we're sort of splitting the middle there, which means it's 172.16.0.0 through 172.31.255.255, which is the same thing as a 255.240.0.0. Whew. See what I mean? You kind of have to get straight the binary, the decimal, how that figures out into the representation of the final IP address. But I will tell you, this is really confusing when you first start to work with it. But it's remarkable how quickly you catch on once you understand what things are being asked of you. The question I always get about the A+ certification is, I really want to focus my efforts on things that are going to make sense to know for the exam. Why would you want to study something that didn't really work very well for the exam? This is what you always get in class. People always ask, is that going to be on the exam? Is that something that's going to be on the exam? One of the things that you'll notice on the 800 series exam are performance-based questions. And that's why I'm working with my friends at GTS Learning. I talk to these guys almost every week, it seems, because they've always got something going on. Their headquarters is in the UK, and we just Skype together and talk about things that are going on. And through the years, we've integrated my videos into their technology. They've got now a completely cloud-based system to provide you with books, with sample exams, and they now have labs that you could take. You'll see an example of this, and you can sign up for these labs absolutely free, a sample of these exams on the GTS Learning website. Let me go back to that first page. You can find that at professormesser.com/freestyle labs. This is one of the problems, of course, with these new performance-based questions, that some of them may require you to do something. And I don't know what they are. Maybe it's install a printer. Maybe it's go to the command line and perform some networking tasks. Maybe it's put together a PC. You know, there's things that would be useful to know. Well, the Freestyle Labs is a completely virtual-based lab system that's in the cloud. You don't have to have any equipment where you're sitting. You can run it on anybody's computer, because it doesn't require a huge number of resources on your device. And you simply connect out to their system to be able to see these labs. It's quite remarkable, really, to be able to work with these, and so easy to work with them. I'm going to kind of bring one up on the screen just so you can kind of see what this is like when you're working with it. I'm getting there. I know you can't see this on your side, but I'm going to bring up the 802 labs to be able to see this. So this is the live labs on their site. And they have introducing Windows 7, system administration, user account management, disk management, file management. So if you wanted to go through application management, they got a lot of labs here to work through. So let's go through Windows maintenance tasks. I'm just going to choose one and see this. So I'm at a low resolution. It's complaining that I'm at a low resolution, but that's so you can see it on your screen. So here is the lab itself. We're going to do disk cleanup using check disk, using disk defragmenter, configuring backups. There's a whole lab set up with a domain controller, a Windows 7 workstation, a Windows XP, which of course you have to know for your A+ exam, both of those operating systems. And here's what you'll need to do to get things going. So you can go to each one of these devices and power it on, just as if you were going over to a real device and powering it on. And it actually starts that device. And you can go through all of the different labs that they've set up step by step. Here's how to do disk cleanup. So make sure you've powered on the devices, connect to the device. After the login, you'll see the desktop, click start, select all programs. They step you through. So if you've never done this before, They take you through the exact process for doing these things. And it even shows you screens of what you should be seeing. So you can see that piece. A really nice way to go through and work with these different things that they have on their site. Now, one of the things I work with GTS Learning is that I've got free videos, and we don't all have a lot of money to work with. So there is a special price on these of $99 to be able to work with these. And that's where I think you get into some real value. Let me step back so you can get that URL, professormesser.com/freestyle labs. So you're able to work with those pieces. That's a good price, I think, for labs that will take you through everything you need to know for the A+ exam. Because here's the virtual lab. Now that we booted it, here it is on my screen. Here's this device. So you can go through, and it said I need to go to my all programs, go to my accessories. You can step through and do exactly what they say to do. System tools. Now we can go through and do any of the things that are required from us. Disk cleanup. I think that was the first one we want to do. Select the drive you want to clean up. I want to clean up that one. So without changing your computer, without needing Windows XP somewhere and Windows 7 and Windows Vista, you can do it all from right here. I realize it doesn't fit on my screen very well, but on your screen it would. I've got a very low resolution here for you. So you're learning here in this virtual environment. And when you're done, you just close your browser. It's all done in my browser. This is all done in Firefox right now. So very, very useful. They have both a Java-based version and an HTML5-based version. So for those of you that don't like to load Java on your computer, use the HTML5 version. Some really nice capabilities there. Make sure you take a look at it. Absolutely free to try at professormesser.com/freestyle labs. Very nice to have that there. And we thank GTS Learning for helping support what we do here as well. So one of the questions that comes in, and this is something that a lot of us are using if you work at an office and you go home, you want to have access to the resources in that office. And the A+ exam expects you to know how people are doing this. So how could you link your network from your home to your business and then effectively be on your business network? This is something that's a real challenge. We used to do this through Dialup. And for your A+ exam, you need to understand, because there are still people using Dialup around the world. You know, in the United States and in other countries, in the United Kingdom, in Australia, in China, you know, most of the world, I think, has figured out when you're sitting in Japan, you've got high-speed network. But in a lot of places, you don't. So Dial-Up really helps as well. You can set up a Dial-Up configuration to dial up your home office, your headquarters, as long as they have a modem on the other side as well, and link your two computers together, and now you're on the local network. Very easy to set that up, but I think most people these days are working with virtual private networks. You have a piece of software that's on your computer that connects back to what we call a VPN concentrator back at the home office. And it encrypts all of your traffic between your device and the concentrator. That means that if somebody's on the internet and they're sniffing those packets, they're looking at the traffic, maybe they are in the same coffee shop as you, and they're grabbing the data out of the air and looking at it on their screen, which I will tell you is exceptionally easy to do. And if it is in the clear, if it's not encrypted, they can read your mail. They can see what passwords you're using. They can see a lot of information. You can see the files you're downloading from a website. They can see the same graphics, screens, and information you are seeing. They can rebuild what you're seeing on their screen. Quite remarkable. So the VPN concentrator allows you to set up this encrypted tunnel, which effectively says, Mr. Computer, connect out to that concentrator, and from this point forward, use that tunnel to get to corporate. Encrypt everything, send it through the tunnel. On the other side, your VPN concentrator is going to decrypt that information and drop it off on the corporate network. You're effectively just an extension now of your corporate network. Very nice to have that. Now, a lot of these things are built into Microsoft Windows. It's built into Mac OS X. It's built into Linux. There's a lot of VPN clients that are now just part of your operating systems. If you have a mobile device, a tablet device, there's VPN clients on those devices. You may not even realize there's VPN technology there. You just point it to corporate, and now you're encrypting. That VPN client, there's one in Windows. This is what it looks like. You can even integrate other pieces with it, what we call multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication means that you are using different things to be able to authenticate yourself. And these things may be something about something you know. Maybe it's your password. That's something you know. It's private. Maybe it's something you have. I have my PayPal key here somewhere. Where is it? So I have my PayPal key, Whenever I connect to PayPal, I use this key to be able to get in. I use my username, I use my password, and then every 30 seconds, every minute or so, it puts a number up, which you can't see right there. There's a number. But it's worthless to you right now because you have to know my username and my password, and in 30 seconds or a minute or whatever that's set to, that number changes. So even if you had my username and my password, this changes. You still have to have this. I have to carry this everywhere if I want to get into PayPal. There are other clients that you might run on a mobile device. So it doesn't have to be a physical key generator anymore. You can also very easily go to a mobile device and be able to authenticate through your mobile device configuration. Here's one that gives me a number every X amount of time. Let's see if we can get it focused in. There we go. That one's very, very important to me because that one gets me into World of Warcraft. So I can't tell you how important that is. So I have that. You can't log into your game unless you use a multi-factor authentication. Isn't that remarkable? There are many ways. Twitter just started multi-factor authentication recently in the last month. Anybody using that? And the way they're doing it, I love this multi-factor authentication. You log in with your username and password, and then they send you a text with a key, with a code, and you type in the key code right there. That's really great to be able to have that. So this device for PayPal, some people are asking, can't the signal to the device be intercepted? There is no signal. This is a completely standalone device. It is a pseudo-random number, meaning that there's an algorithm within this device that knows what the next number will be. And it's from a human perspective, it looks completely random to us. But the reality is the algorithm knows what it should be. It is synchronized using a serial number, which I'm not going to show you. But there's a serial number on the back of this device that you sync up with the other side. And they go, oh, that's that serial number. And it's what day and what time right now. The number should be this number. Pretty cool, huh? Very, very, very useful to have that. So there's no radio connection to the dongle. There's no aura coming out of it. There's nothing magical about it. It's just synchronized. We all know what the number should be. If it's Wednesday at 7:05 p.m., then the number should be 774772, or whatever it is. Very, very useful to have that. It's not a random number generator. So in the chat room, people are going, is that an RNG? Is it a random number generator? It is not. It is a pseudo-random number. It is not random. If it was random, both sides would not be synchronized. I guess technically it could if you had the right seed, but there probably is some type of randomization initially, but then from that point on, it's a standard algorithm that's giving you a number that's going to be exactly the same on both sides. So really useful to have that. You can use that to connect from work to home. You've got the ability right in Windows to launch that VPN, connect your VPN configuration, add your extra authentication. Oh, also another type of multi-factor authentication, something you are. Notice I put that there. Something you are. Something I am. So it would be a thumbprint. It would be a handprint. It would be something that was maybe biometric, something I am. Very useful to have that there. Okay. We're getting close to the top of the hour. We're going over this month a little bit. I've got a lot more to go through. But first, I have a question for you. And my question for you revolves around the abbreviation, the acronym of the month. I get a lot of people sending me notes that says, what is that? What is this thing that you have there? And the acronym this month is, what is PCI? And I want you to vote on this one. What is PCI? There's PCI, I guess, could be a number of different things around the world, but I'm looking for one specific kind with computing. You can go to vot.rs number 746609. And when you get to that website, you will see that the options are, it's a type of memory. It is a kind of bus architecture. It is a network protocol. It is a display technology. What is it? What is PCI? What is that? And you can vote at vot.rs 746609. Now, I mentioned this because on your A+ exam, you will need to know you'll need to know a lot of different things, but one of the things you'll need to know is how a motherboard, a computer, maybe even a network might be configured. So it's really useful to know what these different components are. So the question is it a type of memory? Is it a kind of PC bus architecture? Is it a network protocol? Is it a display technology? PCI. Well, you folks are very quick at voting on this. We have 32 respondents, 34 increasing. Let's have a look at the results. And the answer is, didn't fool anybody again, a kind of PC bus architecture. Now, when I am working with all of these different architectures and I'm trying to figure out PCI and what it is, let's go back to our slideshow here. One of the things that I run into in trying to figure all of these things out, especially with PCI, because there's a lot of different kinds of bus architectures. And the bus architecture, PCI, is one called Peripheral Component Interconnect. I almost have to always read that. You know why I always have to read that? Because I never remember what it is. We never use that term in the industry. We always say, oh, it's PCI. That's a PCI bus. Very, very useful to have that there. It is an expansion interface that's been around for a long time. We created it in 1994. A lot of machines these days don't have PCI. The new motherboards, they're not really using PCI anymore, primarily because of a couple of reasons. One is that the expansion interface itself is one that is a parallel bus. And the reason I mention that is that the parallel bus it's kind of slow. The parallel bus throughput, because you have this big wide bus and all the bits go down the bus at the same time, and all the bits have to get down the bus at the same rate so that they are received at the same time, and there's a clock and everybody has to keep track of this, and the bus has to be big on your motherboard. There's a lot going on there. The rates you can get with even the fastest possible PCI bus is about 533 megabytes per second, which in the big scheme of things on a bus these days, not so big. That's why we've pretty much moved to PCI Express. PCI Express is, you'll see it abbreviated as PCIe. That's going to be important for us to remember later on. PCIe. Whenever you work with PCI Express, you'll notice that the PCI Express speed's pretty fast. The PCI Express is one that is also constructed a little bit differently. It's not a parallel bus, it's a serial bus now. We have what we call lanes that are used. One lane going this way, one lane going that way. So it communicates differently. One nice part about this is the lanes are really one-way streets in both directions, and everything's not sharing exactly the same bus on this parallel piece. So pretty useful to have that. You'll see these abbreviated in different sizes. Just like you have a 2-lane highway and a 4-lane highway and an 8-lane highway. Same thing on your bus of your computer. You can have 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, or 32 full duplex lanes for PCI Express. And we call them by. So it's by 4 or by 16 lane sizes. There is another type of bus architecture you have to know for your certification. We've already mentioned it in the chat room, PCI-X. Well, that's confusing. That's PCI Express or PCI-X. What's up with that? PCI-X not really used much anymore. Pretty much everyone's gone to PCI Express, but you still need to know about it for your exam. So in the chat room, you're already prompting me. So the question is, Sarah in the chat room asks, then how can you tell which one it is? You'll notice I didn't give you any pictures on this. I took the pictures out. If you go to the actual video for this in my video group, there's pictures. But I want to show you a way that you could help test yourself for the A+ exam. So something that would help. And here's what I do. Sometimes I do this just to kind of check out different things. And this will not only be important for the PCI type piece of it, it's going to be important for other pieces. I use Google. I use this Google. Now, for those of you not familiar with Google, Google is a very large search engine that scours the internet for information. Very useful. But there are features within Google that I'm finding all the time and I'm using all the time. This is one that I use a lot. Let's bring up the right view of this world. So here's Google. I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to type motherboard. Put some Mother's Day. I'm just going to type motherboard. Great. So this is a normal Google. We can go through the list of things. Now notice there's images in here too. And if I wanted to test myself on what I'm seeing on a motherboard, it would be really good to see that image. Well, you'll notice on Google, there's an option right here at the top, right underneath your search that you did, that says, I'm looking at the web results. What if I looked at image results? That would be nice. I'm going to click images. Well, now you get a page full of motherboards. Look at all this stuff. Let's take it to the next level because we want a lot of detail. I want to see everything on the motherboard. There is a more option at the top, and there is a search tools option at the top. And search tools is what you want. Right next to the more, right next to images, map, shopping, more, search tools. And I'm going to go over to size, and I'm going to click large. Now, you're going to need a little bit extra bandwidth to be able to do this. Notice there are a number of motherboards that are already labeled. Well, I don't want to use those. That's cheating. I want to use something different to see my motherboard. So I'm going to flip around and try to find one that's kind of mixed it up a little bit. I'm going to choose this one right here on my, which one is bigger? 1620 by 1223, 1600 by 1262. They're about the same. I'm just going to click one. And it brings up a thing that says, okay, this is this type of motherboard. It's a gigabyte. I can visit the page or I can view the original image, and it puts on my screen an enormous picture of a motherboard. In fact, there's the full zoom. I can read everything on this motherboard, but here's what's useful for your A+ exam. You can now look at this and try to determine, try not to read exactly what you're seeing on the screen, but now try to determine what these different pieces are. Okay, I have these things at the bottom. Those right here. Those look like my memory slots. So if I was going to put some DIMMs in fact, you can see, cheating a little bit, DDR3 is written around the motherboard. Okay, that's my memory. This big thing right in the middle, well, I know that. I know that certainly is a zero insertion force type of CPU socket. So that's definitely my CPU. Now, there's other little things on the motherboard. If you start looking around, maybe down here at the bottom, I've got these other tiny little interfaces. Now you can start looking at these and go, wow, those are different. These interfaces that I have, these purple ones down here, those are my SATA interfaces. Even says right there, SATA. Oh, I'm becoming familiar with this. Now, notice kind of right off the CPU is this heatsink. In fact, it's a heatsink that's connected to another heatsink over here. They're connected to each other. And this heatsink over here, if you were to look at it, is for your power that's coming in. This one right here that's much bigger, that is undoubtedly your North Bridge. So that is where you're going to have a lot of the processing take place between the CPU. And if you look close, I'm going to zoom this up even a little bit more. I realize live stream may not be able to see this perfectly. If you look close, look at all of the leads, look at all of the bus information that's going right from the CPU right over to the North Bridge. You can even see it on the motherboard. There's probably also capabilities to go directly from memory to CPU as well with your DMA, and you'll see bus connections there as well. Look, they're all squiggly on the screen. Then you've got, as I mentioned, we were talking about PCI and PCI Express. This motherboard, and one of the reasons I chose this motherboard, is that it has both of them on the same motherboard. So if I look at this one, you can see they do look very different. There's some that are tiny, some little small ones. Trying to get on the screen so you can see it. Some little small ones. Some that are a little bit bigger. These right here. In fact, there's two. They're almost the same size here. And just by looking at them initially, it's kind of hard to tell that they are very similar, but they are different. Notice that they are a different size, really, and they have a different marking on them to designate what type of card really goes in there. These are the PCI slots. It even shows the word PCI right there next to the slot. These are the PCI Express, PCIe slots right here. And you'll notice the size of the number of lanes happens to be written on this motherboard. This is a PCI by 8. The PCIe is for PCI Express X8 by 8. These are by 1, like tiny little by 1s, by 16. There's a by 16 right there. So just by looking at a motherboard and really examining it, we don't often get to do this because it's stuck inside of our desktop computer. You can really start understanding what's here. And even better, I can go back to Google, scroll down a little bit more, and let's pick another one. Now, if you're looking at a motherboard and you're just not sure what you're looking at, because you're looking at the picture, you're like, I don't know what that is, find out the name of the motherboard. It may be written on the motherboard itself. It happens to be a Foxconn motherboard, A74ML. It's written right there, A74ML-K. You can Google the manual, and the manual usually has a diagram to show you that. This will be extremely useful for you when you start working with the A+ exam. You may be asked to label the motherboard. You may be asked to pick out, is this a PCI slot? You may be able, given a picture of a SATA connection, go, is this SATA? Is it PATA? What is that? In fact, I think that motherboard we looked at originally, that wasn't the one we looked at originally. Did it have both on it, or did it just have SATA? It was this one right here. And this one had, if we look at the original image, I have floppy drive, I have USB. Looks like I only have SATA on this one. So this one didn't even have PATA on it. Don't see it anywhere. And I just see memory. Oh, there it is. It's right there. It's hidden down at the bottom. There's IDE. Doesn't say PATA, has that old IDE designation. There's my PATA drive. So this motherboard supports both PATA and SATA. Kind of nice to have that there. So there's a really good example of how you can use absolutely free tools. You don't have to have a lot of hardware sitting around. You don't have to have motherboards sitting in the back like I do. You just go out, look at the latest ones. Look at the brand new motherboards that were just released. Look at the ones that came out 3 years ago. You'll see big differences between how those are laid out. You'll see things that are now missing on the motherboard. They're getting much smaller and much easier to be able to work with. Very, very useful to have that there. I find that's exceptionally useful to take advantage of that. So that's a nice tip for you. That will really help you before you go into your 801 exam, is to be able to do something like that. So let's talk about questions about the exam. I realize we're now at the top of the hour, so we're going a little bit over today, but I'm absolutely here to take your questions. Just as a reminder, if you'd like to call in either now or in the after show, so I will stick around a little afterwards, you can call us. Studio lines down there at the bottom for your reference. But I already have your questions, and the questions that came from you this month, one was, how often will tasks using the command line come up? What a good question. You want to be able to use that command line. The command line itself is certainly an option they might have for a performance-based question. But your performance-based questions don't necessarily have to be command line questions. As I mentioned, they might give you a list of things, and you have to put the list in order, maybe by bandwidth, maybe by distance of the network length. Who knows? I'm just thinking of all the things that you can list out. Maybe by CPU speeds. I don't know. They might give you a lot of things, but there's a great video on this. I mentioned this earlier. That is the candidate experience. Not just performance-based questions, but what should you expect to see when you walk into your exam? What types of things would you expect to have there? This steps you through. I think this is like a 15-minute video that steps you through the initial process, looking at your candidate agreement, going through performance-based questions, looking at multiple choice questions. I think that video is still there. Very, very useful to have that there. So that is something to take advantage of. You can find that video at bit.ly/exam link. I think that's still there, and the chat room can tell me if it isn't. And if it's not, I'll just modify the video to pretend I never said that. I'll edit in post, as we say in the business. Because, I'm all Hollywood. Let's get another question. Somebody said, I heard when taking the A+ tests that if you answer a question correctly, the next question will be more difficult. However, if a question is answered incorrectly, the next question will be less challenging. Huh? So, that's an interesting one to think about. Now, this allegedly results in not really having to take all 90 questions. Is this a rumor? Is this real? What is this? What is that about? Well, that's something that is not too far off the mark. Now, there are two types of testing with A+, or really with online exams. There's probably more types, but two primary types that you'll run into. One is called a linear format. And currently, at least most recently with people that have come to me and said, I just took my A+ exam, my Network Plus, it was a linear format, which means when you started the exam, you could have gone to the last question, you could have gone to the first question, and you can step through them in order. And when you're done, you can go back through and review other questions that you may have not been quite sure about. You can double check the types of things that you might have there. But I have seen instances where somebody has said to me, I didn't get to finish my exam. It got me up to a certain number and I was done. So I'm wondering, and CompTIA has always said this, we might be adding what we call adaptive testing. This is the way that other manufacturers, other certifications work today. If you were to take, there's a networking company I know of off the top of my head, I know they use adaptive testing, which means they ask you 10 questions right at the beginning on different topics. If you get them all right, pretty much done. If you get any of them wrong, they start asking you more questions about what you got wrong. And if you miss too many of them, the test just stops right there. Like, well, you've missed way too many to even be able to make it up later. You can't go back and review. You can't jump around. They start at the beginning with this adaptive testing. They figure out what you know and what you don't know. They go, well, did you just miss that one because you weren't thinking? Let's ask some more questions about that one. Oh, you got those right? Okay, you pass. So if you can go straight to the end and hop around to different questions in your exam, then it's a linear exam. And up to this point, I haven't heard of any. In fact, the chat room, everybody goes, yep, mine was linear, mine was linear, mine was linear. You know, I don't think we're talking out of school if we talk about the type of format that it was using. I don't think that's a violation of anyone's candidate agreement. But that's one of those things that you get into and you worry, is this going to be a format I'm missing? Now, CompTIA could change the format at any time. And there's always been rumors and whispering that, oh, they're going to change to an adaptive format. And when you get into other manufacturers' exams you might get into adaptive formats. So that's one of those things that you just have to be prepared for. Adaptive formats are really unforgiving. They will tear you up. You get one wrong, it's over. Sorry, not so much for you. That's not what you want to get into when working with those. So is it a rumor? At this point, we think it's a rumor. At this point, we don't think it's adaptive. We think everything's still linear. So I think that's the easier exam. I think they're making it hard enough with the performance-based questions where you kind of have to think outside the box a little bit. It's not the normal multiple choice questions any longer. So that's one of those things that hopefully, if it changes, we'll talk about it on the next study group. I'll send out tweets. The first mention I get of that, you tell me, I'll tell everybody. I am not a CompTIA partner. I don't have any type of agreements with them. I try not to create problems, of course, with them. But if something changes dramatically in the exam, I'd like everybody to know about it. That's very, very useful. So what are the minimum number of study hours to take the CompTIA A+ exam? Just how long? I would say 7. There you go. I don't know. It's different for everybody. It's different. I think when I took my A+ exam, and I did it backwards. We've been talking about this week in the chat room for some reason, is I took my Security Plus first because I was in a security role. I'd already been in the industry about 20 years. And I took my Security Plus test and passed it. Then I thought I'd like to take Network Plus because that fits very tightly in with Security Plus. And at that point I said, why don't I make a course about A+? And an A+ course, that'd be great. I should probably take the A+ exam. So I sat down and I've been doing, in the past, I've done help desk. I've done where I've visited places and break fix, repair computers, replace hard drives. I've worked in data centers. I've done server administration. So I figure, well, I'll just sit down and take the A+. Let me read the book. And the stuff in the book went way, way beyond what I ever had to worry about before. But as I read it, I'm like, this makes perfect sense. Oh, that's why the hard drive plugs in that way. Oh, that's why the memory sticks I was using had to be a particular kind. I was doing it, but I didn't understand why I was doing it. So it took me about 6 weeks of study before I felt comfortable enough to walk into the A+. I wish I could remember what grade I got. I've got my exam stuff here somewhere. I keep threatening to post it online. I've got to do that. But I stepped through it in 6 weeks, and that was having a pretty good knowledge of the technology in general. So if it took me 6 weeks, maybe it'll take you a shorter amount of time. I was working full time. I was studying at night, doing that type of thing. Maybe it'll take you shorter. If you're just getting into technology, I would think it would take you longer, and it's going to depend on how much time you take. So there's no right or wrong answer to this one. What's the minimum number? I don't know. But there's things that you can do to help you understand if you're ready to take the exam. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. What new things have been added to the A+ exam? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I have made a set of frequently asked questions for the A+ exam, and they are on the Professor Messer website. So if you go to Professor Messer, and if you just go to the frequently asked questions, they're at the top of also my video series. If you go to the 800 series, video series, probably the 700 series as well, at the top are frequently asked questions. And I talk about what topics should I study? Can I pass my certification just by watching these videos? Are these videos updated with the latest content? What type of job can I get? And et cetera, et cetera. I try to take the questions that you ask the most. So if you were trying to determine what's been added, there is also just above this, what's the difference between the 701, 702 and the 801, 802? And that takes you to a study group replay where we talk about what's on this advertisement. That advertisement now, let's skip that ad. That's delightful. It's an ad for something. Okay. So one of the questions I get a lot about the exam itself is, are there any new questions? Look, we're just repeating ourselves. It's the same thing we just talked about. There's a whole video there that goes into detail. So you can absolutely find that material and get that piece and understand all the things you would need to know. Effectively, I'll give you the short version of this. The short version is that there is pretty much the operating systems is almost identical, except Windows 2000 was dropped. There is a new section for mobile devices. There's additional questions about networking and additional questions about security, and the entire format of the test has been changed as to what is asked on each exam. There's about 75%, 85% overlap of content, depending on how you count it. So that's one thing to think about for the exam. Some people are worried that there's going to be other things on the exam. For instance, does the new A+ certification now include touchscreen tablets or Apple OS? Well, now we're getting into, does it have it on there? Are there things about this on the exam? Is Apple operating system OS 10 on there? Is Linux asked of me? What types of things should I look for? And I would say your best bet, in fact, probably an answer to a lot of these, especially the one that says, how do I know when I'm ready to take this exam, or how long should I study for the exam? Do this. Go out to the CompTIA website and download the exam objectives. And I say this in every study group because I see this all the time. Just in my chat room this week, somebody said, I just got back from the exam and I didn't pass it. And they asked me questions I wasn't expecting. There were things on there I had no idea they were going to ask me. And we asked him, when you look through the objectives, didn't you see those things in there? And they said, what objectives? What are you talking about? I don't know there's objectives. I didn't know about that. And I feel, if I could have just told you prior to going into the exam to get those objectives, that would have been great. If you Google CompTIA exam objectives, you will get this information. Take the first option at the top, exam objectives. They really don't even ask very much anymore. I'll put my name in. That's my name. You can always send me an email directly, james@professormesser.com. I am in the United States, and you can choose what objectives you want. Let's just choose the A+. I think that would be useful. And get exam objectives. Here they are, and they give you both the 800 series and 700 series. You know, in the United States, or at least the English-speaking version of the A+ exam, I mentioned that it is retired on August 31st, but these other versions that are non-English are versions that are still available until December 31st. If you are not in the United States or you would like to take a different language exam. Let's choose just the 801 objectives. I'm in Chrome, so it just pops up and right to the PDF reader. I guess I think it's maybe in Firefox now as well. It tells you exactly PC hardware is going to be 40%, networking is going to be 27, laptops is 11, printers is 11, operational procedures is 11, and then it goes through exactly what you need to know. For PC hardware, On section 1.1, you need to be able to configure and apply BIOS settings. You need to be able to install firmware upgrades. You need to flash the BIOS. You need to be able to look at component information like RAM, hard drive, optical drive, CPU. You need to understand BIOS configurations like the boot sequence, enabling and disabling devices, the date and time, clock speeds, the virtualization support, the BIOS security like passwords, drive encryption. What's a TPM? What in the world with LoJack? What are you talking about? Built-in diagnostics, monitoring like temperature monitoring, fan speeds, intrusion detection, notification, voltage, clock, and bus speed, all in the BIOS. That's section 1.1. It is remarkable how much detail CompTIA gives you about this exam. Pages and pages and pages of information that tells you exactly what's on the exam. I printed mine out on dead trees, on paper. Remember paper? I printed it out and got highlighters. I made notes, and then I would check mark. Okay, let's go to this section 1.9. Evaluate and select appropriate components for custom configuration to meet customer specifications or needs. Do I understand what a custom configuration of a graphics CAD/CAM design workstation would be? Do I? Check mark. I can just cross those out. In fact, that's what it is. I cross through them. All right, let's go to the next one. And as I was crossing out more, I'm like, I know this stuff now. I've crossed out about 90% of this piece of these papers that are in front of me. I'm ready to take the exam. Now, the number that's going to be right for you is something that may be specific to you, but really, really useful to have that. And it just crushes me when people show up in the chat room and say, I failed, and I had no idea that these exam objectives even existed. You will find these exam objectives at the top of every video index page on the Professor Messer website. There's a reason I put them there. And I think I'm going to put them in red. And I wish there was still a blink tag for you HTML people. Just so, make sure you download them. Make sure you get them. Make sure they're there. I say them every month on the study group, and yet still not there. Question that came in, after getting the A+, what's the next best certification to obtain? Well, AC, I think it depends on what you want to do. The certifications that are there, like A+, that's a good starting place. But I think most people, they kind of know what interests them. Maybe you like networking. Maybe you like security. Maybe you're into databases. Maybe you'd like to do data center management. Maybe you'd like to work with servers. Maybe operating systems is your thing. Maybe you want to understand network infrastructure. So all of those things should point you to a direction. Maybe virtualization is your gig. Maybe I want VMware. Maybe I want Cisco. Maybe I want Microsoft. Maybe I want Network Plus. Maybe I want Security Plus. Once you have your A+, you kind of think about branching out into a specialization, or at least leading you towards specialization. I think Network Plus applies for everybody. So I think that's a good next step. But at that point, spread your wings. Now, you also have to consider, what am I trying to do with these certifications? Do I want to use this certification to be able to get a job somewhere else? Well, I need to see what job description is there and what they want. Maybe they want VMware. Well, that's where I'm going. I'm going to get that VMware certification. Maybe they want a certification on networking. Well, maybe I need to get specialized networking. Maybe I want to get into firewalls. Maybe there is a specialized firewall certification I need to get from a particular manufacturer. That's fine too. You know, those things I run into all the time. So the next one is going to be the one that's appropriate for what you want to be able to do. Pretty important. The link of the moment. We get all kinds of crazy links in the website every month. And the link of the moment this time is one that has come up because I mentioned showing all of those motherboards, but sometimes you're looking at a motherboard and you're trying to figure out what it is. Go out to sonic84.com. There is a great poster there at sonic84.com. This is a gentleman, I guess, I don't know what his name is or her name, that has created a poster of this hardware chart. And they even have it available. You can, of course, click on it and download it and look at it immediately. Just by doing that, there's the poster. And you could also, there's a high def version of it, so you can really zoom in really close and look at all of the different configs. The reason I'm taking you to his website at Sonic 84 is because you can also purchase a poster version of this if you wanted that. So that's nice too. So maybe it's something you'd like to always have on the wall, just always there. and you can order a print right there. Let's see how much it is to order as print. So there it is, a luster finish. Maybe I want a matte finish, and I want it to be big. 30 by 40 is $54.99 US. Glossy finish is same price. Luster finish, it's a little bit less. If you want it smaller, just to carry around with you, you can also have a smaller size. So I got different sizes and different prices. It's kind of nice. I don't have any association with his website or what he's doing there, but it's really great that he's put this entire poster together. I think he's working on a version 2. He's not getting very far with that. Real life got in the way, but still some great information on that version 1 poster. Very nice to have. Nice thing to have available, I think. Well, we've come to the end of yet another study group. I want to thank you for joining us. If you'd like to follow us throughout the month, you can, of course, follow us on Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter, or on YouTube at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. If you want to follow me anywhere, type in Professor Messer / the name of the thing. Google+, YouTube, Facebook, get you there. Our folks at GTS Learning have those labs available for you. Special price of $99, and you try it free at ProfessorMesser.com/Freestyle Labs. If you want discounted vouchers, GTS Learning has a link I have right on the Professor Messer website on the right-hand column at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. 10% off any CompTIA exam right there and available for you. We have monthly A+ and Network Plus study groups. I hope to do more of different kinds here in the future, but so we're doing 2 currently. You can always see what the latest things are at ProfessorMesser.com/calendar. And I wouldn't be able to do it without you and all these great questions you send me every single month. I want to thank you for that. Thanks for joining us live. The chat room has been fantastic. And of course, I would like to stick around afterwards for the after show. So if you're watching the replay, there's another replay of the after show where we'll just sit around and talk about all kinds of crazy things. Thanks for joining us again. We're going to see you next month on the Professor Messer A+ Study Group.